Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about boondocking. The do's, the don'ts, the should haves, all of the things. Make sure that you stay tuned through the whole video because at the end we're going to tell you some of our favorite tips and tricks that we've learned while boondocking.
The reason we're experts at boondocking is we've been boondocking 95% of the time for the last year. Comment down below what your favorite type of camping is. Desert camping, forest camping, camping on the top of a mountain.
Winter camping?
We've been there, we've done it. So just let us know what your favorite is. Boondocking is not free.
It's free to stay on the land, but once you figure out all the costs that go into boondocking, it's not
It adds
free.
up. It's not free. It's cheaper than staying in a campground once you have the initial investment into everything you need to be comfortable boondocking.
There's a lot of hidden costs up front that we didn't realize when we first started out. So some of these hidden costs that people don't necessarily think about it right up front, one would be the generator gas that you use to run the generator, so you have electricity.
That has done nothing but gone up for expenses.
Yes, so that one has been a big one for us, which is why we invested in solar.
Obviously, those are big costs up front, but they don't cost you much to maintain once you get them.
And you don't necessarily need them to start boondocking either. It just makes life a lot more comfortable,
Yeah.
a lot less complicated.
Right. And propane, especially in the winter. We boondock all year round, so we're from Minnesota. Sometimes we get caught boondocking there in the middle of winter. So that's a lot of propane. Another hidden cost behind boondocking is the fuel to get places, because you're going to be moving around more often if you're boondocking. Be it, not staying in a spot as long, because you can only stay on BLM land for 14 days, or
On average.
running to town and back to dump your tanks or whatever. You're going to be moving around more. So there's more diesel or gas or whatever your tow rig takes.
That has to be taken into consideration also.
If you're going out to boondock for the first time, what would be the first modifications that you would do?
Batteries. That was the number one thing that made our lives miserable when we first started boondocking, because we only had one crappy battery.
We didn't know anything about boondocking. We didn't know anything about RVing, honestly. We were boondocking because we were cheap, didn't want to pay for a campground, and it wasn't really in our budget. It was getting into winter, so the furnace had to run all the time. The battery didn't even last half the night, and that was a headache.
So if you're going to have batteries, it would also really help if you had an inverter also.
So the first couple things you're going to want when you're boondocking, you're going to want batteries, and then get an inverter. But to really run your inverter, you need a good battery bank.
So for us, that was the 4 Battle-Born lithium-ion 100 amp hour batteries. We have a whole install video on, which is going to be down below or up on the top here on a card. And so far that setup has worked really well for us.
Be our friend, hit the subscribe.
Please?
It's over there. What are you doing?
Come on, hit it.
We're not going on with the video till you hit it.
Did you hit it?
Nah, I still don't think you did, but we don't have time for your shit.
Yeah, we've gotten really good at conserving water. It was a real struggle to go from having a house and our own well and a tankless water heater.
Short showers and
Military style showers are your friend. That was the one thing that I absolutely hated at the beginning of RVing and living in an RV and all of that, was I didn't get to take long hot showers anymore. But also while you're doing dishes too, there's a bunch of tricks on how to conserve water there. For what's worked for me is just not turning the water on all the way, or just like turning it on just enough to rinse the dishes or whatever. When you have dirty dishes, rinsing them like after you're done using them so it doesn't get like all dried on and gross in there is definitely a big help. Dawn has this power wash spray also that I use a lot, because you can just spray this in the bowl or whatever you're trying to clean, and you only have to use water to rinse it. So that has been a huge water water conservation hack.
Along the same lines of saving water, you got to save electricity too. One of the biggest things you can do is shut your inverter off when you leave, when you go to bed, unless you have a good reason to leave it on, because it takes more electricity than you would think.
And then also switching your lights to LEDs if they're not already. There are a couple lights on our camper that aren't LEDs that we have switched.
If your lights aren't LEDs, swap them to LEDs.
Any little thing that you can find to save electricity is gonna help you in the long run. Now, how do we find the spots where we camp? It's kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different apps that I use. He has no idea about any of this. This is my department. So I use...
She finds them, but she cannot navigate to them.
No, I just know how to use the apps really well. The main one that I use is Campendium. It has reviews on different locations, like, and pictures that people can upload.
Whether or not you're gonna have cell service.
But that has been probably the most helpful thing, and it's not more than just boondocking. Also, I mean, you can find dump stations on there, regular campgrounds, regular parking. Another one that people don't usually think to use is just Google Maps. Usually, I will find a spot on Campendium, and to get like a better look at the area, I'll put in the coordinates on Google Maps and use satellite view and zoom in and figure out exactly how large the area is, if it looks like it's like super rocky or, whatever.
Another app we use all the time is the Mudflap app. It's not necessarily boondocking related, but we save a lot of money using it. It's a fuel discount app. You can save between 30 and 50 cents a gallon. You can use our code in the description below to get $10 of free fuel. Let's talk a little bit about staying in your Walmarts, your Bass Pro Shops, those kind of places. We hate doing that.
It's not our favorite thing.
We pretty much avoid it as much as we can.
Yes, but that's just us. But if you are gonna do it, don't camp there.
Don't put out slides if you don't have to.
Take up as little room as possible.
Park at the back.
Yes, park at the back. Just be courteous to everyone that's still using the parking lot and the Walmart and everything, because the Walmarts are not letting people stay in their parking lots overnight anymore, because there have been bad experiences, bad people doing bad things and
speaking of this,
wrecking it for everybody else.
Yeah, speaking of this, let's roll on to like camping etiquette. This is a sore subject, and I feel like the get off my lawn person. Seriously, people like let their dogs run all over, which if we're boondocking, I understand it. But if you have a dog... Literally yesterday, there was a person walking like way over there, and he had his dog out, and the dog was in our front yard. The dog took a poop right by our fire ring. Yeah, right at the bottom of our stairs.
And the dude did nothing about it.
If you're like us and we camp, in a lot of four-wheeling spots, and you go four-wheeling, awesome. We'll probably be friends. Unless you're one of the people who rips around camp all day, or they'll come in the middle of the night and rip around. Like, come on. We're trying to, like, live here. We're trying to work.
Just be courteous. If you're riding around, like, in camp, do it at a slow pace. You do not need to go ripping through the entire campground. Unnecessary.
That was a nice wheelie, though.
That was a pretty cool wheelie.
and on that, too, like, don't camp right next to somebody. Especially if you're in a big, wide open space. I understand there's forests and whatnot where you're going to be next to somebody, but give them as much space as possible.
If you're in a wide open space, think about a football field. And if you have dogs and kids and whatever else, double it. A lot of people come out boondocking to get away from everything.
The peace and tranquility.
Yes, and they want to just have a nice, quiet time. So just make sure you give them their space. Along the lines of peace and quiet, don't leave your generator on all night, please. It's
Especially if
annoying.
you're camping right next to somebody and you have a loud generator.
Rule of thumb for running your generator, if you start it at like 7 in the morning ish, that's usually pretty fine. And then just make sure you have it off by like 8. But think of it like staying in a campground and how they have quiet hours. That's kind of just a general rule of thumb for anywhere you stay.
If you're going to be boondocking, take care of your trash. Don't leave it everywhere.
You do not need your mother. You are a grown-ass adult. Take care of your own trash.
We will lose this land, and the great privilege we have.
And it already is.
We are losing BLM land left and right because people leave their trash everywhere. Do your part. It sucks, but if you have to, if a place is really bad, pick up a bag of trash of somebody else's.
Yeah. We want to use this land as long as we can, so we have to keep it nice for everybody else. While boondocking, of course, you're probably going to have to go into town to get groceries, run errands, whatever, grab propane, whatever. Is it safe to leave everything here while you go into town? We have not had any issues.
We haven't had a single issue with...
Knock on wood.
We haven't had a single issue with people breaking in or stealing stuff from our camp or anything. I don't know if we just look grumpy and they don't want to deal with us, or we don't go to those areas, or what, but...
We've gotten really lucky. I mean, it all also depends on you being responsible for your own stuff. Don't leave valuables outside while you're gone. Lock up your bays.
Make sure you get a good trailer lock. We've got a really nice one.
It's just a good peace of mind for us. Be responsible for your own area, and I mean, we haven't had any issues. So along with doing your homework and being safe out there and all that is to research where you're going to be staying. Like, if it doesn't look like the nicest area, there's not great reviews on it, whatever, I usually opt for not taking our chances.
Crime tends to be around cities. We don't really go to cities.
We can kind of avoid cities at all costs.
We did have one kind of
scary incident in a national forest in Colorado.
We were near Colorado Springs in the national forest over Labor Day?
Yeah.
And there was a shooting in the middle of the night. Cops in and out all night. But I mean, other than that, that was our closest call to anything happening, and nothing happened to us.
Right. It was just kind of scary though, because the shooting and whatever that happened was only not even a mile away from us.
No, it was a quarter mile away.
And now you've made it to the end of the video. So we got some of our tips and tricks about boondocking that we are going to tell you about. Before you get to a spot where you're going to start boondocking, one of the things that we always do is to empty out our tanks and to fill our freshwater tank. So we can stay there for as long as we need, as long as we want, without having to run into town to dump tanks and do whatever. That's probably the number one tip that we would give everybody. And also, coming into winter, it is cold, obviously, at nights, and nobody wants to have to worry about propane, not having propane in the middle of the night. So we ended up getting a couple spare propane tanks, so we don't have to go into town to get propane twice a week.
So we can go about a week, 2 weeks in the winter, and we can go a couple months in the summer without getting propane. So
we've gotten a lot better at this as time has went on. In the beginning, we were just worried about getting to a spot without breaking anything. But now when we get to spots, we're like, okay, let's go look at this spot that we're planning on going to.
Yeah.
How do we want to pull in to optimize our solar, optimize the shade and or sun? It all goes into it. If you have solar, when you get to a boondocking spot, make sure you know how you're parking to optimize that solar so you can get the most sun power you can during the day.
Yeah. Campers aren't necessarily efficient, which leads me to the next thing. window plastic.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all can see
Can't
this,
probably see it. But this is window plastic on our windows. Makes them much more efficient. Helps in the sunlight too. Like if there's sunlight directly on your camper in the middle of summer, your camper's going to heat up really, really fast. And then you're going to want to turn on an air conditioner, which is using electricity, which you don't want. You want to minimize that. So this helps to like not heat the camper up in the summer and helps to
keep it more warm in the winter.
Yeah.
Because it adds like a second barrier.
Right.
So it doesn't get as cold and drafty near the windows in the winter. But in the summer, that's when we use the awnings more. The awnings will provide shade most of the day for the inside, so the inside doesn't get as hot as it is outside.
And part of that is just like positioning your camper in the right orientation for your setup. If you've got awnings and it's not going to be windy, face your windows towards the sun. You'll get more light in the camper. But on the other hand, if it's going to be really sunny and you don't want it to get like hot, park the camper the other way so that most of your windows are not towards the sun and it won't heat up nearly as bad. You got to have a plan. You got to have a backup plan if the spot's full when you get there.
Which has happened a couple different times.
Yeah.
Usually when I'm looking for boondocking spots, I try to find a couple within a certain distance. So I'm like, okay, this is my plan A. But if plan A is full or we can't get into it or whatever, then I have a plan B or a plan C and
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Most of the time, though, it works by plan B.
If you liked this video, watch our house tour, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you later.